I am actively working on writing a book on the history of the King James lookalikes, the ones that bear the name King James or very like the King James but are not. And in the process, it's a work in progress. I got my marks and everything on it. I was reading a chapter I'd just written to my family, and my daughter said, "Oh, is this your next vlog?" And I said, "No, it's part of my book." She says, "No, this has got to be your next vlog." So my wife concurred and other people, and I asked some friends on Facebook, and they think I should do it too. So do you mind? Let me read you a little bit about the genesis of the New King James. Hi, I'm David Daniels from Chick Publications. In the New King James Version, in the Great Tradition, author and NKJV executive editor Arthur L. Farstad told about how Sam Moore, president of Thomas Nelson Publishers, got the idea to make a new translation based on the King James Bible. Quote, "After struggling with the archaic and obsolete vocabulary and phrasing in the King James Version, young Joe Moore asked his father, president of Thomas Nelson, Daddy, you make so many Bibles. Why can't you make a Bible that I can understand?" This question was the genesis of the NKJV. I just found out from Sam Moore's autobiography, he was 11 years old when he said this. Here's my problem. I have 5 children. When I came to trust the King James Bible as God's preserved words in English, November 30th, 1998, my kids ranged from 9 to 1. In all the years since, not once has any of my kids, male or female, told me the King James was a Bible he or she didn't understand. You know what that tells me? Somebody wasn't reading the Bible with his kid. Sam Moore started out in the USA selling Bibles door to door. Did he not have in mind how to assist his clients in understanding what he was selling? Understandest what thou readest? Here's the straight scoop. Even a little reading each day, with a little talking about what is read, makes a world of difference and opens up the Bible vocabulary words like a flower in spring. God gave us an excellent pattern for life when he spoke to the Hebrews through Moses, Deuteronomy 6:4-7. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes." Look, I'm a dad. These words, they mean something to me. So let's break them down. These words, not someone else's, but God's words, the ones he chose, shall be in thine heart. They only get in by reading, learning, and meditating on them. Thou shalt teach them diligently to thy children. They must be consistently and lovingly taught to the kids in the following ways. Thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house. Ouch, that sounds like the television and the game boxes go off and the Bible is open. And shalt talk of them when thou walkest by the way. Talking about the Bible when going from place to place with the family. And shalt talk of them when thou liest down, reading and talking about Scripture at bedtime. And shalt talk of them when thou risest up, reading Scripture and talking about them in the morning when getting ready for the day. My son and I, my oldest son, when he started working at Chick, we would read the Scriptures as we drove to work. And we did the historical writings, we did the prophets, we did the Gospels and epistles, and now we're doing the history. We're in 2 Chronicles. When we finish Esther, just driving to work alone, we will have read through the entire Bible together. And we're only a few miles from here. All right, back to the book. If we have spent time with our kids, reading and talking about God's words, then they'll never feel the need to beg mommy and daddy for a dumbed-down Bible. Our 57-inch flat screen died a few years ago. There had been a few years when we'd grown to finding the best shows we could find and spending our evening hours watching television, but two things happened. First, we noticed that when people came home and wanted to talk, we shushed them, instead of stopping everything and letting him or her speak. It's not that we wanted them quieted, it's that we were hooked onto the TV show, like a hospital patient can get to morphine. It numbs you from the pains of the day, but it also stops communication. Even though we would talk about the shows we watched, sure, we talked, but the person entering the house was only seen as a hindrance, unless he or she sat and watched with us. That was not good. Second, we noticed that TV shows weren't getting any better. In fact, they started sticking tiny compromising scenes, especially homosexual kisses and occasional curse words, taking the Lord's name in vain, and physical affection and nakedness that should not be on a TV screen. But we'd been seeking the Lord, all of us, and it was getting convicting to the point that we made a decision. If one of those scenes happened, even on our favorite show, we would give it just one more try. If they did it a second time, the series was over for us. Soon, we weren't watching very much of anything on TV, and certainly not on cable. We had no premium channels, but we started changing the way we watched television, and we came to a decision. We stopped television altogether. So, when our huge 57-inch TV died, we did no CPR. It stayed dead. Deborah and our youngest son took the carcass out onto the street where someone picked it up. Then Deborah did something monumental. She rearranged the furniture. Deborah and our youngest kids moved furniture so everyone faced everyone else. Suddenly, people were the focus, not entertainment boxes. When someone came into the room, everybody turned, faced him or her, and that person could tell all about the day, experiences, feelings, and know all the family in the living room was giving their attention. You can't buy that kind of family value. What about today? Let me be clear. We all have our smartphones. Some have laptops, a couple have tablets, but we all face each other. That changed the rules of the game. When someone gets another's attention, off go the earphones, down goes the phone or laptop, it's listening time. Do you know we go over Scripture now, have impromptu studies on any topic, help with term papers, analyze stuff we're reading about or watching or listening to on the internet and all sorts of other things? We do family stuff. And we can fulfill, at least in part, Deuteronomy 6:6-7. So we literally thank God our TV died. And that Deborah took it on herself to rearrange the furniture. It solved one of our few communication problems, and it enabled us to focus a whole lot more on Bible talk. I said all that to say this. How dare anyone blame the Bible for a kid not understanding what it says? It's not the kid's it's not the kid's responsibility to understand the Bible. It's the parent's responsibility to teach the Bible. Once the child understands with help from the parent, then nobody need blame the Bible for something it was never intended to do. The Bible is not a nanny. It is the words of God to be taught by a believer to non-believers and taught by the older to the younger, and especially taught by the parent to the child. Joe Moore's words weren't an indication of a flaw in the King James Bible. They were an indictment of the parents' lack of teaching Bible to their son. That should have been the lesson that Sam Moore learned when his son asked that innocent question. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Please pray for me as I continue this project. God bless you and have a wonderful day.